Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So, good morning in California, good afternoon if you're in Europe, or good whatever you are, wherever you are. I'm Sean Ellis. I'm the founder and CEO of Qualaroo, and I'm very excited to have Colin Zima with me today. Colin is the Chief Analytics Officer at Looker and was formerly the Director of Data Science at Hotel Tonight. So, welcome, Colin. So today we're going to be talking about growth hacking with data and how to find big growth with deep data dives. And so Colin's background, particularly at Hotel Tonight, if anyone knows the story, Hotel Tonight was able to drive a lot of growth through just deep data understanding. Colin's one of the best out there, and really excited to have him today. So the hashtag for today's webinar will be data hacks, and we'll be monitoring Twitter for any questions that you send in there. Mostly at the end, we'll take the questions, but you can also put questions in the go to webinar kind of field for questions. So, but we're going to start with a question for you, and it's a poll question that we have here, and I'm going to launch poll. So it's asking essentially what your primary job function or role is. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to answer that. Main thing is it'll help us do a little bit of tailoring. So as the answers come in here, it looks like most people are focused on user acquisition. A lot of people are falling in the other category. So that could be, maybe some people specializing more in actual data science. So go ahead and hit that hashtag on Twitter if you want to let us know what some of those others are. That'd be pretty helpful. So we'll close out the poll now. But so 47% are showing up as user acquisition. Brand is pretty low on the list there. So we're going to kick off then with just a little bit on the two companies that are sponsoring today's webinar. So I'll give you a bit of a background on Qualaroo. I know a lot of you are familiar with it already, so I won't go too long. But essentially, it's the idea of Qualaroo is to complement your analytics that are good at telling you what has happened. Qualaroo helps to tell you why something is happening. So it makes it easy to collect voice of customer insights from site visitors, keeping them on task, but really understanding what they're trying to do and what's preventing them from doing it. And as you understand visitor intent, it gives you a lot better ability to unlock growth. And Colin, you want to give us a quick commercial on Looker?
Absolutely. So Looker helps companies model their data and make it kind of more accessible to everyone in the organization. So that works down from data analysts and making them more efficient and helping them do their job better and faster, down all the way to trying to get every employee access to the databases like a data analyst has. So it's kind of about empowering every single person at the company to make better decisions through data.
Great. So Colin, I've given you the control of the keyboard, so take it away.
Perfect. Okay, just testing it out here. So we're here to talk about how to use data to grow your business. And this can mean a lot of things, but kind of generally how we approach this problem is the discovery process for making decisions about how to run your business and how to use data kind of revolves around 5 steps. Kind of the most important step, honestly, is asking questions. If you're not asking questions about your business and trying to find ways to do things better, you're not going to be able to make all of these other decisions and testing. So when more people are asking questions in an organization, you're going to have better results, and that's why empowering everyone to think with data more is effective. So you ask questions, you generate a hypothesis, you test that hypothesis. This is kind of the A/B testing world. You analyze that data. Once you learn things, you kick that out to product. That's kind of where the decision making starts seeing results for the business. But just as important is understanding why those results are happening. So kind of you can throw all of your data into a black box and it can spit out the best thing to do, but if you don't really understand why that's happening, you're going to get into this kind of position where, kind of everyone talks about these black box models and not understanding them and how difficult it is to develop product on top of that. If you're not understanding results, you're going to run into problems. So understanding is just as important as everything, as is making sure that it's actionable, kicking it out to product or marketing, kind of whoever is going to be making decisions, but bringing in decision makers for all this stuff. So the way that classically decision making is done around data is kind of, think about the blue lines here. You've got a data analyst, and this can be a junior person up to a very senior data scientist, but a lot of the insight is getting generated by this data analyst, and it's getting passed out to different team members. So team member up here might be a marketing person. The data analyst is generating insights, passing it to that team member. Over here you might have product, operations, but if the data analyst is sitting at the center generating all the insights, again, you're kind of limiting the amount that your organization can learn over time. So enabling these purple connections is really crucial to developing your business. If a marketing person is the one that can develop the insights, you're going to get insights that you wouldn't get otherwise, because the data analyst doesn't know marketing like a marketing person. And if the operations person is enabled to generate insights, you're going to get better insights because the operation person knows operations best. So at a high level, you really want to enable every single person in the organization to help make better decisions, because that's just how better insights are generated by experts in those domains. So how is this done? There's lots of different ways to look at this problem, but kind of one of the most straightforward ways is a diagram that lots of people have interacted with before. It's called the AARRR metrics funnel diagram. This is just kind of a way to break down every customer's experience with a business. So you acquire a customer. Once you buy that customer and or find that customer, you need to activate that customer. After that customer is activated, you want to retain it, generate revenue, bring others back to the site. It's a fairly straightforward way to approach your business, but it's a pretty simple way to bucket all of the insights that you're coming up with. You're either acquiring a customer or you're trying to retain that customer, you're trying to bring more customers in from your current customer base. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at ways that you can apply lightweight data science, growth hacking type concepts to each step of this funnel with some examples that hopefully you can take back and kind of apply to your own businesses. So one just quick note on that AARRR model is that's something that Dave McClure came up with a few years ago, and I think it's a really great way to frame looking at it. Yep. This is actually something that we did at Hotel Tonight. We looked at each step of the process, tried to look at kind of fall-off rates between each one, and it helped us focus where we wanted to spend a lot of our time. To go back to this diagram, if 99% of your customers are dropping off between acquisition and activation, then you need to spend time working there. If only 1 in 10 customers comes back and purchases again, then retention needs to be your focus. So just understanding what the fall-offs here are on every step is going to be really important as well. So I'd encourage everyone to start there. But, I mean, let's just dive in. So kind of this first example is something that we see a lot of different places. So a lot of people approach marketing or SEO and think that it's not a strategy that's going to be profitable. They might just on a global basis be spending more money than they think that they're earning through a given channel, or in this case, mobile SEM. But what a lot of people kind of, where a lot of people might stop, when you take the time to actually slice and dice your entire campaign, it's not uncommon to find keywords in areas that are performing at 10 and even 100x the rate of other keywords. So in this example, we have a company that's doing rental cars, and they're looking to target customers. And what they did here was they ran a large mobile campaign looking at a bunch of different ad channels and found that targeting customers in airports was extremely effective. The theory was that customers that hadn't booked rental cars were looking for them in airports and they could be targeted. But what they actually found by surveying the customers, so bringing the qualitative data in alongside that quantitative data, is that it wasn't customers that hadn't booked rental cars. Well, it was customers that had booked rental cars, but it was a very specific subset of that group. It was customers that were waiting in line to book rental cars because the lines were so long, they were getting so frustrated with the process that they were seeing whether they could essentially jump the line by booking online. So this is a great example of taking a quantitative insight, which is that this specific area of mobile SEM was working really well, advertising to mobile users in airports, and trying to understand why that was happening, and then applying that data back to the campaign to improve conversion rates. So it's customers in line. How do we target the customers in line? And kind of what can we generate out of those customers?
Right, and in particular, I think in particular on this one, being able to then once that hypothesis was updated, that it wasn't last minute bookers, but it was people who didn't want to wait in a long line, then changing the value proposition on the advertisement is likely to get you even better results.
Yep. And this ties into kind of a general high level theme, and this is kind of, I think this is almost the single most important thing that you can do with data to grow faster. And that is just taking almost every single attribute you can about your customer base, dividing up users, and comparing subsets of users. So let's go through an example to make it a little bit more clear. So Hotel Tonight is an iPhone app that's trying to sell last-minute hotel rooms. If you take all of their data and start breaking it out by every cluster of users. So what source did a user come to Hotel Tonight from? Is it an Android user? Is it a Facebook user? Or sorry, is it an Android or iPhone? Did it refer through Google or Facebook? Are they in California or New York? If you break down your data in every single way possible, it's going to be nearly impossible not to find significant differences amongst your customer base. So kind of over on the right, we see a not atypical pattern where the payback rate on a Google user is extremely fast and the tail is shallow. On a Facebook user, you're not generating a lot of upfront revenue, but the tail is a lot longer. And this is kind of just, you can think about this from an intent perspective. If you're buying a user on Google, they're probably at the point of purchase. If you're buying a user on Facebook, you're purchasing someone who probably is not at the point of purchase, but could become a customer long term. But it's really important to do this analysis across as many variables as you possibly can. So one really significant insight that we came up with at Hotel Tonight was that users on Wi-Fi versus 3G looked extremely different. And it's logical when you think about it. A user on Wi-Fi is closer to a computer, likely closer to home. A user on 3G is likely on the road. And we actually found that 3G users were a lot more valuable than Wi-Fi users. So that's a pretty trivial piece of data analysis. It's just, are people here worth more than people here? But it's really impactful for decision making into the future. And by the same token, the type of credit card a customer uses, kind of day of week and time of day, and where customers are more valuable, all this kind of analysis is going to apply to decisions about how you're going to acquire customers. If customers in the morning are worth twice what customers in the afternoon are, you're literally going to double your ROI by shifting all of that afternoon acquisition into the morning. So dividing this stuff up as much as you possibly can and really refining this model is going to generate more value, and it's going to allow you to buy more people that are going to spend more money. So just at a really high level, understanding your customer base well is crucial. One quick note, Colin, that I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if you saw the announcement in the last week that Facebook has started to allow targeting by bandwidth. But I mean, once you discover that bandwidth, the people on a lower bandwidth connection on mobile are a better fit for Hotel Tonight, then it's about taking action on that, and that would be just you're able to keep your antenna up for those new emerging opportunities. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's so much availability of slicing up ad spend at this point that if you're not doing this type of analysis, you're going to buy lots of users that you don't actually want. So taking the time to figure out which users you actually want and which ones you don't want is really important.
And that's such a key tenet of growth hacking in general, which is doubling down on success. And I think you did so important from what you were just covering there, and something I've been doing a long time on the survey side. Like one question that I tend to ask is, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? And I have a benchmark of trying to find 40% or more of the people who would be very disappointed without a product. But if If the answer is like 30% it comes back, then that means that in aggregate it's 30%. But when you segment, every segment, there's going to be some people are higher and some segments that are higher and some segments that are lower. And yeah, just being able to double down on those positive signals is huge.
Yep. Okay, so to move one step lower in the funnel, now we're looking at activation. So a lot of different companies have come out with analyses of trying to figure out when users become engaged. So I think Facebook had an analysis that said once you have 10 friends or something like that, you're an engaged user. This example here for Twitter is Twitter found that once you follow 30 people, you become engaged in the service. Every single business can do this same analysis. So where Twitter cares about friends, a lot of e-commerce companies, what that's going to look like is a type of purchasing behavior. So Twitter's trying to get you to follow 30 people. One e-commerce company may want you to go through one path, and another e-commerce company may want you to go through another path. I'm going to skip ahead because I kind of talk about this later. So sorry for the slides being out of order, but there's a really important concept here, which is what we're looking at is the number of users that have purchased a given number of times. So we have two hypothetical e-commerce companies. In the top business, a lot of people have purchased once, not quite as many have purchased twice, 3 times. We have a pretty significant drop-off from 1 to 2. This is another e-commerce business where lots of people have purchased once, even more people have purchased twice, etc. But what you can actually do with this analysis is come up with a probability that given a person does one thing, that they get to the next step. And that's what this graph here on the right is. So what we're looking at here is the probability that a person that purchased once will purchase again. The probability that a person has purchased twice will purchase again. Now this is the probability that a person has purchased 3 times that will purchase again, and so on and so forth. And you can slice this, again, every single way that you want. That's probably the best idea. But what we see here are 2 very different businesses from a retention perspective. And kind of we get this magic number for our businesses. So in the first business, once a customer has purchased 3 times, they're a customer for life. In the second business, once a customer has purchased once, we have a customer for life. So we have this kind of magic number that our business really needs to target to get our customers active down the line. So our first business, once they've purchased once, we haven't really done much. They've bought one thing, but if they're not going, there's still a high chance that they're not going to purchase again. So driving a user to purchase twice or 3 times and focusing your credits or something like that can be really impactful to making this business more successful. The inverse is true for our second business. The second business, once you've purchased once and really twice, this business is successful. So this business needs to spend a lot of time focused on user acquisition. And doing this type of analysis is going to help you as a business figure out where product needs to focus. Is it retaining users? Is it driving more users into the funnel? Sometimes you actually see businesses with declining retention over time. And that means that you've got a significant product problem. If people like your product less and less over time, they're less and less likely to return, then your business really needs to think about what you're doing and why users aren't returning. So to jump back to follow Twitter's 30 people, everyone needs to find these really key metrics that indicate that a customer is going to be active down the line. So the next step in the funnel is, I probably should look, retention. So everyone has been on Amazon.com. At this point, pretty much everyone in the United States has purchased something on Amazon.com. What people do notice is that Amazon does a really good job of, once you're on a customer's on a product page, finding other things that you might want to purchase. So I just looked up a random Harry Potter book on Amazon, and they actually have 3 different recommendation engines working all at once alongside each other. But what people might not notice is these are actually very subtly different recommendation models. So the first one, customers who viewed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone also viewed. This is a viewing and also viewed algorithm. Kind of below the purchase area, we've got a frequently bought together, so like basket analysis. This is people that bought one book and checked out with another book. And then we've got a third recommendation algorithm, which is customers who bought this item also bought. So this is over a customer's lifetime, things that they've purchased together. So obviously people know that Amazon's been really successful, but a lot of it is these algorithms behind the scenes that are increasing average order size and getting people to purchase more things. But what people don't realize is that you can build algorithms that work a lot like Amazon's with some very lightweight math. This is something that really any e-commerce company can do, and the math is very simple. So right here in the upper left of this is easier than you think slide, we have something called a Jacquard similarity score, and it's not really important to understand the mathematical notation here, but what we're looking at here is the number of times two items intersect each other, so how often two items appear in the same group versus how often the two items appear ever. So if I've purchased one item, if one item's been purchased 9 times and another item's been purchased 9 times and they've been purchased together once, 1 out of 17 times these items have been shared. So it's trivial math to do. Any e-commerce company can do this. But where you start generating lots of value is doing this over users, doing this over orders, doing this over purchases, over views. Just like Amazon does this, you can create recommendation models over every different cluster of data that you have. And because everyone's recording all these transactions, all of this data is readily available to any e-commerce company. And suddenly we have an algorithm that lets us that enables us to do things that might seem very technologically complex, but are actually very simple behind the scenes. So if we go back to this Amazon example, frequently bought together. So what frequently bought together gives us the ability to do is when a user is checking out, put other products that they might be likely to purchase with this one item in their basket. It gives us a way to increase average order size over time. Customers who also bought this item. So doing this analysis allows us to remarket to customers over email. So a customer goes in and buys one Harry Potter book. How can we reach out to them and get them back to our site? We can find other things that over time users have purchased together. For viewing stuff, so for a media company, this is like the New York Times popular articles, so you can just do popular articles, but you can also recommend articles to people based on the page that they're on or based on a series of pages that they're looked at. And it's really as simple as this equation right here. And kind of this is a quick example that we coded up in Looker, but we can plug this into any company and give them a recommendation model in 5 minutes. So this is something that seems really complex that every business should be doing. And you'll find insights that you might not have expected out of this data. So we're working with a liquor company here, and we were looking at products that they purchased alongside Red Bull. So classically, you would just think vodka gets purchased with Red Bull. That's kind of obvious, and that does show up. But the most popular item that gets purchased alongside Red Bull is actually seltzer water and tonic. And what you get there is that people that purchase Red Bull are purchasing vodka, people that purchase vodka are purchasing tonic, and it's actually more frequent that they're purchasing the mixers together than the mixer with the vodka. And it gives you a really subtle way to start getting people to increase order size over time. And it's like this is just something that every single person should be doing.
Colin, that is super cool. I mean, just it seems so complex, data science, but when you lay out just that recommendation formula, it's super simple.
Yep. And I mean, obviously Amazon's doing probably crazy stuff on top of this. This isn't to sell short using crazy data science to do stuff, but there are ways to get 80% of the way there with very, very simple algorithms.
Awesome.
So by the same token as doing kind of these crazy recommendation models, understanding what drives conversion rates is also super important. So a classic example of this is Airbnb's Pro Photos. So in the same way that you can divide up your analysis on the front end of the funnel, like are Android users better than iPhone users, etc., you can do this on the purchase side too. So Airbnb found that listings with high quality photos received, I think it was something like 3x the bookings of average listings. I don't remember the exact number, so 2 to 3x. But what they did here was they actually responded to this and actively sought to make more listings look like those listings. So it's crucial when you're looking through the booking flow to understand why drop off is happening. Again, so at every single stage, look at why drop off is happening and why success is happening, and then to iterate your product around what you discover. So you can see when Airbnb actually launched professional photographers, and this isn't the sole reason that bookings exploded for Airbnb, but if you can find something that's going to increase conversion rates by 50%, then you're literally going to grow your business by 50%. Like, people need to understand that if you're finding anything in the funnel that can increase a given step by 50%, so even if it's from 1% to 1.5%, that's a 50% growth of your entire business. So you get massive leverage out of finding attributes of success in your business, and you need to do that at every single stage of that funnel. So magic number, we covered this, but again, just to hammer on this again, you can do this on the retention side, you can do this on the activation side. It's about doing heavy data analysis to figure out why success is happening on activation, on retention, on renewal, all those different types of topics. And this math is very easy to do. You're literally just adding up how many people have done each step, and then you're doing simple division. So each one of these dots is just all the bars to the right divided by all the bars, including the one that you're looking at. Really, really simple math here. So simple math goes a long way. So thinking through retention more, I think one interesting thing that people really don't know about Netflix is that a lot of their original programming was actually done in a very data science-y way. They diverted a lot of their data scientists to understanding what made programs successful and unsuccessful. So again, a lot of it was attribute analysis. Who are the characters on this show? Who's the director? What's the topic? Dividing it down into as granular detail as possible about the show. It's a political thriller in DC with a male lead or something like that. But what they didn't stop there. They actually, when they decided to start making original programming, they thought, we have this wealth of recommendation ability based on what we've learned about all of these programs. Can we take this data and actually reverse engineer successful television shows? So when Netflix makes a show, it's a little scary, but they've actually already figured out what we want to watch and built the show that we want. And there's a reason that their shows are much more successful than shows on average, and it's because they actually find attributes of successful shows and build to that. So what they did was they found that people that liked whoever directed David Fincher, people who liked David Fincher shows liked Kevin Spacey. Both of them were very successful, and that's kind of the origination of House of Cards. It was the topic, the director, and the main character. They found a lot of success in those three nodes. They combined them together, built a show around it, and it's a wildly successful show. So what they did here, again, was they took data analysis and they applied it to product development in a way that might seem counterintuitive. And a lot of this is just the way that you can think about this for your own business is letting data drive product. So thinking about how you can use the information you have, listening to your customers to give them more of what they want. It's hard to explain, but it's really important to think through every single way that you can use your data as a business, even if it seems more counterintuitive and kind of too big. So last, we wanted to hit on Uber's referral system. So Uber has obviously been wildly successful, but one thing that they haven't really been known for is their referral system. So I've used Uber a lot. I'm not sure I've really referred anyone to the service. And a lot of this revolves around how the program got constructed and kind of the attributes of the program itself. So Uber is viral in the sense that people love it and they tell their friends about it, but their virality on a lot of the user acquisition side wasn't as refined as it could have been from day one. So when people think about great referral networks through the web, Dropbox is always at the top of the list. And it's because Dropbox focused a lot of time and energy early on figuring out how to deeply embed referrals in the product. They gave you more space when you referred a friend. So they built it deeply into the product. So thinking through how to do all that and making the redemption process seamless is something that was really valuable. And Uber has improved that over time. But just thinking through what data points you can look at around a given topic. So in this case, referrals is crucial to making the business more successful.
So one of the things that we learned at Dropbox that I don't see Uber doing is that Dropbox essentially always gives the customer the benefit of the doubt. Like even if you're not enrolled in a referral program, if you share a folder, if you share a file, and the person on the other end signs up for Dropbox, you get credit for that referral, and you get free space, and they get free space, and it's a way to pull people into the program because you actually get that feedback loop of congratulations, you just got this space because this person signed up. What I've found is when I'm sending invites on Uber, a lot of times the person will forget to enter the invite in, and then once they've done the first ride, they're no longer sort of qualified to be invited, and so that they could easily just connect that the phone number of the invite when it's sent through the text link that you see there on the screen, they could easily connect those dots, and it's just much more likely to kind of pull people into Uber. So I think, studying where the drop off is, that there's a lot of low hanging fruit for them to probably improve their referral program.
Yep. We spent a lot of time at Hotel Tonight thinking through our referral program and how to create virality. I think one thing people don't really consider about referrals is that they actually enable you to spend more money on each individual customer as well. So if every two customers is inviting another customer, that literally means that you can pay twice as much for each individual customer. So the math's a little counterintuitive, but if one customer invites half a customer invites a quarter of a customer, everyone's done that take a half step to the door thing, you actually get all the way to the door. So each customer becomes two customers, and now you can double your spend. So thinking through referrals and increasing your virality has exponential payoff. And I think people realize this now, but I don't think people tie it back to marketing spend. So,
and of course, if there's an incentive in there, then that's going to be that there's going to be a cost associated with that incentive as well.
Always. Yep. So that's kind of the end of most of the prepared content we have, but if there are questions, we'd love to kind of dig into areas that people think could use more thought. Sean, do you have anything else that you wanted to cover here?
Yeah, I'm taking a look and seeing which questions we have. We've got quite a few here. So let me just so somebody's just asking if the presentation will be made available. Yes, we will send it out to all attendees. And so I was kind of taking a look through here and seeing. I mean, so for one, I'm just going to make a comment just in general. One of the pieces that that just really comes across here is that I made the comment kind of partway through, is that a lot of times this stuff seems really complex, and I know you can get very complex with it, but you can also, as you made the statement, that sometimes pretty simple data science can get you 80% of the way there to a really good result. And so data is something that can be really valuable even in the early stages, and there's always a better way to do things. So that was one of the just kind of my big takeaways with it, was just how some really super accessible ways that you can start driving better growth results with data. So one of the questions that I had, and that I think I've seen a couple other people mention it, is early on, you showed a slide, Colin, where you were talking about kind of communicating data around the organization, um,
Yep.
and particularly between team members as being pretty important. What how do you actually do that? What's sort of the process for
Yep.
if particularly if it starts with a question, is it a matter of just kind of communicating back to the person as a question, or if the question led to a discovery, trying to figure out everyone else who has that has benefit that they can get from that, and then how
Yep.
do you actually pass it along?
Yeah. I mean, so a big piece of it's cultural. There kind of needs to be an expectation that when people have thoughts that they raise them. Like the great thing about working at smaller companies, I don't know the breakdown of everyone on the webinar here, but I would imagine it's a lot of smaller companies. But the great thing about smaller companies is that when people have opinions and they think things that are not working, or they have a piece of research that they want to do, they need to feel enabled to go do that, and they need to have the tools to actually be able to go do that. So if people have tons of ideas and they can never actually get at enough content to actually make decisions about those ideas, they're going to stop having ideas, they're going to stop making contributions and things like that. So a huge piece is enabling people to do things. But a big one for me is that when people came to me with questions at Hotel Tonight, sitting down and going through the analysis with the person, rather than doing the analysis and sending the person the conclusions, goes a long way to helping people feel enabled to do things on their own. So if you come to me and say, I've got this great idea for marketing, I think that iPhone users are better than Android users. If I do that analysis for you and just say, nope, iPhone users and Android users are the same, you're going to feel kind of less enabled to raise that again and to do that again. Whereas if we sit down and go through that analysis together and we look at it a bunch of different ways, first you're probably going to kind of refine that idea as we go through that analysis, but you're also going to feel better next time that you want to talk about an idea that you have, and you're going to feel enabled to do it on your own next time. So it really is like, this is much more cultural, but it's forcing people to do analysis on their own. Everyone in an organization should be making decisions with numbers, because otherwise you're kind of just guessing. So yeah, I mean that's definitely how I approach things.
Great. And then another question that came up here is kind of looking at data science sort of as a service within an organization. Is it something that really needs to be an internal role in an organization, or can an external service provider do it very well? What are your thoughts around that?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm obviously partial as a data guy that I think that data should be a core competency of almost every single business. It's hard to think about a company where the ability to analyze data should not be a core competency. So I would err on saying that it needs to be internal. Now, that said, we went through kind of the recommendation example with Amazon and kind of the very simple model. If you can create those simple models on your own and you need to outsource to improve those models, I can see an argument over why that could be a good idea, but I think it ties back to kind of what you were saying a second ago, which is you can get so far with lightweight analysis that data science doesn't kind of need to be as intimidating as it appears to be. Everyone can do data science in a lightweight way, and data scientists might not like hearing that, but unless you're doing Google level analytics, analytics gets you a really long way towards making better decisions and improving product. And kind of the need for high level machine learning and stuff like that is limited for a lot of businesses.
So, so one of the things that we, on growthhackers.com that we talk a lot about, in fact, we had a big discussion around sort of if you could narrow growth hacking down into sort of three words that described it, what would those three words be? A lot of people participated, but kind of the winning statement was experiment-driven marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
how much would you say that kind of as you were going through there, it did seem that sort of ultimately it's about driving informed experiments, using the data to identify opportunities for experiments that are going to yield better results.
Mm-hmm.
So how much would you say that experimentation is part of this process?
It's crucial. because what's great about analytics is it's going to tell you where to focus your energy. But I mean, everyone's heard correlation is not causation. So if you're learning about correlates, that's great. But until you apply them and learn things causally, you haven't really learned what you think you've learned yet. So doing the actual experimentation, like it's where you turn these conclusions into meaningful advancements. So if you're not experimenting, you're kind of not doing anything.
Mm-hmm. So kind of along those lines, somebody was asking a question about sort of how do you get to that Twitter discovery of the 30 followers? And I if I can kind of paraphrase what I think you said was
Yep.
essentially reverse engineering success and
Mm-hmm.
kind of starting there, and then and once you know that people with 30 followers are much more likely to stay on there, then that becomes a target for you.
Yep.
Would you add anything to that?
So I kind of missed actually a piece of that. I think one thing that people think when they're doing data analysis is that anecdotes don't matter. But what I've found is that if you take an anecdote and really explore it in a quantitative way, that's where a lot of the best analysis comes from. So in the Twitter example, I mean, a lot of it can be top-down, just saying we need to find why people are successful, but a lot of great analysis comes from just an exceptional case and trying to understand that more deeply. So one analysis that I spent a lot of time on at Hotel Tonight was people that launched the app into a sold-out market. So I opened the app one day and I was going to book a room, and we happened to be sold out, and it's a bad user experience. So that from there we can say, okay, let's try to quantify that user experience. So I've got an anecdote and it's a bad experience because I feel a bad experience. Let's take it and see if we can quantitatively figure out what a bad experience is or what a bad experience does for people. So taking that anecdote, turning it into a wide-scale piece of data analysis, that is how you can find a product change to make. If we just say, hey, we never want to be sold out, that's great, and Hotel Tonight is very, very rarely sold out, so that's fantastic. But if you haven't quantified it, you don't really know how important the problem is or what users experience after that product. So a lot of it is just quantifying anecdote and using that to make better decisions.
So I have kind of an interesting sort of anecdote that somebody told me the other day, and I'm not going to name names on it, but it was a company that this person used to be in where the founder was essentially pushing some pretty spammy activity and essentially saying that we should do this. And this person then tried to go and use data to prove that it was counterproductive to be that spammy, but then they found that through the data, through their analysis, whether it was correct or not, that spam actually works. And so sort of where does judgment come into some of these things where, or do you have an opinion around that where, you know, the data may be saying it's working, but sort of like in the big picture of things or just, you know, and you might be crossing a line. Do you have any thoughts around like where that comes in?
It's a great question, and we actually thought through this a good bit around ranking at Hotel Tonight. So things that appear to increase click-through rate and conversion rate and things like that might seem counterintuitive for what we call long-term revenue. So what every single business is trying to do is maximize long-term revenue, and what most data analyses are looking at is maximizing short-term revenue. So kind of what we're talking about is the difference between a piece of data analysis that's looking at short-term revenue and what that means for a business in terms of long-term revenue. So I like to think of data analysis as an input to a decision. You can always, so if we found that spam is better for our business in the short term over whatever term of the analysis that we did, it doesn't mean that we actually need to start spamming people. It means that we've quantified what the value of doing that is over some time period, and we need to decide whether we're comfortable over the long term making that decision about the business. So in that example, you might actually want to pair some sort of qualitative analysis about how users feel about your brand or your company, to kind of look at the opposite side of that. But like a great example is just that if you do some analysis that increases conversion rate by 2%, but it changes the color palette of your website to some other thing. So another classic example here is flashing buttons on websites. Buttons that blink get clicked more. So we could make every button on our website flash, but the aesthetic quality of our website would drop significantly. And that might be harder to quantify, but we can just quantify what it's worth to make every button on our website flash. If that's going to make our business 2% bigger and it makes our website look terrible, we can balance. Is 2% growth worth sacrificing the visual appeal of our entire website? So I think a lot of it's just taking the time to make a good decision and quantifying the cost of different things.
And there's some judgment calls that on the long-term stuff that you might not even be able to use real hard data to support that, but
yeah, I mean, like Coke and Pepsi spend billions of dollars trying to figure out what the long-term brand impact is of national TV campaigns, and as much as that stuff's not scientific, they really are trying to quantify kind of these long-term effects.
I love, Phil Libin at Evernote a lot of times refers to Evernote being a long-term greedy company and not a short-term greedy company. So nothing wrong with greed, but sort of short-term gains at the expense of long-term success aren't worth it in his mind, and he's built a pretty good company with that approach.
Yeah, and it literally is just about quantifying the short-term cost of things and whether that rationally makes sense. So to go back to your spam example, if spamming made your increased conversion rate from 1% to 40% on your e-commerce site, you might say 40x is probably worth spamming our user base. That could be a decision. If it's increasing your website traffic by 1%, then you might say, hey, that's not worth it for us. But until you actually quantify it, you're not going to learn what that decision's worth.
So speaking of short-term and long-term data, do you have any opinions about real-time data and the value of real-time data?
So that's a good question. I mean, from like a hedonistic perspective, I loved watching bookings flow in at Hotel Tonight in real time. It's great to watch your business grow in real time. But kind of to go back to what we were talking about a second ago, there is a lot of false signal embedded in looking at things on too short a time scale. It's nice to be able to quantify product changes immediately, but it's pretty rare for a business to make decisions based on things in complete real time. There's just so little that's happening in real time other than making sure that your website's up that really is important to the business kind of deeply. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
I do feel like real-time data does to some degree kind of affect start to inform gut a little bit on some things that you're doing, more in sort of like the Malcolm Gladwell kind of blink way that you like. One of the things that I realized a while ago. Now everyone's going to probably accuse me of being sexist with this, but I realized that if I retweeted a woman's tweet for growth hackers, that the click-through rate was way better than if I retweeted a guy's tweet on that. And I don't necessarily know why, but I could just see that the whatever the article was that was in that retweet was getting a lot more action in real time right after I retweeted it. And so it did change my behavior in a sense that, if 75% of the tweets were coming from guys and 25% of the tweets were coming from females, that I was going to at least probably keep it balanced to sort of a 50-50 on the retweet, because I was getting a lot of impact, but I didn't want to go too far in the other direction or it would be too obvious what I was doing.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I mean,
so for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. In so much as real time lets you more directly understand causation, it's hugely important. So like the classic example here is for TV or radio ad campaigns, it's really hard to track the quality of spend. The faster that you can understand data coming in on that kind of stuff and tie it to actual ads in real time, the better off you are evaluating that spend.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, but again, I think in the long run of being able to do deeper analysis, you're probably going to get better answers than you can in real time. But flying blindly versus seeing some signal, my opinion is it's probably better than not, as long as you're really narrowing down the data that you're looking at in real time.
Yep. Yep. I think that's exactly right.
Cool. And then, yeah, so there was one question about Looker itself and just sort of where the data comes from that Looker processes.
Yep. I mean, honestly, oops, sorry, I just closed out the presentation.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll,
the data is generally just like every e-commerce business to sell product needs to know how much product they have. So pretty much all the data is just sitting in your back end. Now, there's also a lot of other sources of data that people have, like whatever marketing platform they're using, probably some sort of analytics site for web tracking. Getting as much of that together in your back end as possible is going to help you make better decisions. But really starting with just commerce data, you can generate a lot of insights. All the examples that I used today were analyses just on your transactional database, so what's already sitting in your backend. Once you start pairing that with event data, source data, things like that, you can really layer on analysis, but there's so much available in just your transactional data sets that you can generate a lot of value right there.
Great. So I have one last question for you, and this was just coming from me. So what is the biggest mistake that you see people make with when it comes to trying to use data?
Let me think about this for a moment. I mean, I think kind of two big ones come to mind. The first one's pretty simple, and it's just not doing it. There's plenty of people that just don't spend the time to look at every aspect of their business and fully understand who their customers are, what they're doing, who's better, who's worse, and things like that. I mean, the second one, honestly, is probably the chat that we were having about spamming in general, which is once you've done an analysis, how you take that analysis and apply it to your business. So kind of not having a goal for a piece of analysis. If you don't generate a hypothesis and kind of decide what that's going to do for your business and do this understanding step, like the qualitative stuff around analytics, that's where you can run into problems making decisions as well. Because if you don't set out to actually answer a question, if you're not setting out to learn something very explicit, then you're kind of just poking at conclusions that might not be real. So if I break down a data set 100 different ways, I'm going to find a group that's significantly better than the others. Statistically, there's going to be one that's better than the others. Whether there's actually signal in there is arguable. So kind of the whole loop of figuring out why that's happening and theorizing that it should be happening is incredibly important to doing analytics.
Yeah, and that's the mistake that I feel like I made in my early days. Was sometimes data can be pretty fascinating just to look at, but it can also be a major time suck if you're just sort of randomly pouring through data for the sake of just interesting stuff. So that's why I brought this discovery process slide back up here. Starting with that question, generating the hypothesis, kind of going through it in a systematic way with being very specific about trying to answer a question or trying to achieve a result seems to me to be a lot different than just sort of randomly strolling through reams of data.
Yep. I mean, intelligent A/B testing is always going to be better than random A/B testing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll end up with a lot of flashy buttons if you just are randomizing your A/B testing.
Yep. Cool. Well, I think that's it in terms of questions, and that's just about the full hour. So, Colin, I really appreciate it. I know the feedback on Twitter has been really great, and you have taught me a lot today. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.